Welcome everyone to Hult Virtual Skills Lab. This forum is an online global meeting space offering you the opportunity to skill up and get ahead while being at home. Connect with like-minded individuals and hear from world-class speakers on the latest topics and trends in live interactive workshops and webinars. For those of you who are joining a Hult event for the very first time, first of all, welcome. I would like to quickly introduce you on the background of what we are and who we are. So Hult have designed a school that looks into the future by focusing on developing your leadership skills, challenging you with the future-oriented curriculum, and building a global perspective. We currently offer an undergraduate program, 5 specialists, 1-year masters, also a 1-year MBA and a flexible part-time executive MBA. If you require more information on our programs, please do follow our website, which is www.hult.edu. A little bit about myself. My name is Olga Ivanova. I'm originally from Latvia, but I have lived and worked in the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. And at the moment, I call London home. I am a Hult alumna back from 2010. I graduated from a bachelor degree here in London, and I also have been working for Hult for the last 8 years now. I started with MBA enrollment, moved into marketing, and most recently I have been taking care of the alumni and corporate relations. Now, before we begin, I would like to do a bit of housekeeping. So the recording of this webinar will also be sent out to everyone in the next few days via email. This session will last approximately 45 minutes, including questions. So if you would like to ask a question at any point, please write your question in the Q&A box, which can be found in the Zoom bar at the bottom of the screen. So I hope you can still see the screen and the slides. If anything, please put your comments as well in the chat box. So the session today is about essentially my personal perspective. In no way, in no shape or form, it's a set of rules to follow. It's actually something that I compiled together and something that helped me get through the last couple of months in this state of global panic, and obviously lots of things have changed around the world. And these are the techniques that I have used for myself personally that help me really structure my life and my work, and that made me super, super happy in my everyday life. And I think this slide represents very well the situation that has been out there globally for the last couple of months. Depending on where you are, it has been quite different in different countries, right? For some of us, the pandemic has been quite significant, and the impact on our communities has been drastic. And of course, it generated a lot of panic. And while we know this famous expression or poster, which originated here in the UK back in the war times, which says, "Keep calm and carry on," it is very easy said, but not easily done, right? When life as we know it falls apart and everything is sort of upside down, how can you really keep calm? What we need to do sometimes is actually step back, stop, and think for a second, reflect before we can carry on. We need to understand who we are, how we function, what motivates us and keeps us happy, essentially. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about is actually about stepping back and reflecting about yourselves, how we work, how we function, and what actually is it that motivates us and makes us happy in life. And talking of panic, of course, a lot of us probably went into panic modes. Some of us have been panic working, others panic socializing or panic exercising, and it's a natural reaction of our brain, right? Our brain likes process, likes habit. It's very lazy, so essentially it just gets used to the things that we do on a daily basis, and we just continue doing them. And if something changes overnight, and for a lot of us, things did change overnight. A lot of us switched to working online. We are working from home or studying from home. And the way we socialize with people has changed drastically. And of course, we try to replace those forms of communication or working by doing more of what we are used to. So in order to kind of structure ourselves a little bit, I will be looking into different tools that we can use. And while I have given a subject to this webinar as a work-life balance, I actually think that work, or whatever it is that main project in your life at the moment that takes up most of your daytime, whether it's study or childcare or actually work, that is essentially part of our life and sort of our little personal infrastructure. And ideally, of course, we should be doing in life the projects that we love, that motivate us, and therefore they are the essential part of our life that keeps us going and keeps us happy. And of course, aside of that, we do have our hobbies, families, friends, sports, whatever it is that we enjoy doing on the side, apart from that main project. And starting from the very basic fundamentals, so sleep and food are probably two of the daily activities that we very often take for granted and underestimate their importance. Although those two activities are fundamental to our well-being and directly affect our brain and, as a result, our body function. Sleep, for instance, helps us repair our body, improve memory, and boost immune system. And we often neglect sleep because we feel if we need those couple of hours extra in a day for our activities, sleep is the easiest to give up, right? If we feel we can give up those 2-3 hours of sleep a day, suddenly we have more time. And for those of you who tried to maybe test out this model, you probably realize that in a few days, you do feel more tired, you're actually less productive, you manage to do less in your day. And at the same time, you don't need 10 or 12 hours because then also you are more tired because you're not active enough. Really, you just need around 6 to 8 hours, but that needs to be quality sleep. So probably you have heard on many occasions, and there are lots of articles around that, quality sleep means no technology in the bedroom. So no TV, laptop, or phone. And I have been guilty of that. I did those mistakes a couple of times. I usually use my phone as an alarm, but also sometimes I would wake up at night and check that WhatsApp message or Instagram post or email. And once I've seen some message or photo, I cannot fall asleep anymore. Or even if I fall asleep, I keep waking up, and actually I wake up very, very tired. So I have taught myself to actually switch off my phone and leave just the alarm on so that I don't get distracted. If you ever need to kind of implement that habit, there are different tricks you can use to trick your brain into that. If you need to hide your phone somewhere in the cupboard, or somebody mentioned to me they actually locked their phone in the car outside of the house for the night so that they're not tempted to check their phone. Whatever it is that works for you, do try to avoid technology, and in this case, you will see how that changes your sleep quality. Even top executives out there stress the importance of sleep. If you take Jeff Bezos, for example, he sleeps 8 hours a day, and he claims that really helps him make vital decisions for the business. Tim Cook, Apple's CEO, gets up at 3:45 every morning, but at the same time, he also goes to bed at 9 p.m. and he gets almost 7 hours of sleep. And those CEOs are super important and busy, right? They run big companies, they make vital strategic decisions. And if they can get 7 to 8 hours of sleep in their agenda, I'm sure that each of us can do so as well and function very productively in our work lives, but also, of course, for our friends, families, and for whatever we do outside of our working life. Food is, of course, another important everyday habit or actually need rather than a habit. And I'm not going to talk about the importance of healthy diet, but what I wanted to bring up here for a lot of us who have been stuck at home for a few months now or a few weeks, depending on where you are. It's a dangerous situation because we have 24-hour access to the fridge or kitchen cupboards, and that can be tricky, especially for those of us who like snacking, who like kind of having sweets or crisps in between the main meals. So if you struggle to control yourself, probably you will need to avoid buying them or really lock them up somewhere. Or if you live with somebody, ask that person to lock these up from you so that you're not tempted. Whatever whatever works for tricking your brain, maybe try to implement that technique. Another important daily activity is exercise. And again, here I'm not going to stress the importance of keeping healthy and being fit. I want to talk about the emotional side of exercise. And even before we talk about exercise, I want to mention breathing. You probably notice that whenever somebody is stressed or is having an anxiety attack, usually a doctor is advising them to breathe. And even if you try that now while you're listening to this session and actually do a really deep breath, and you will notice in this moment, in those split seconds that it will take you to breathing really deeply, you actually don't think about anything. And when you are not focusing on anything, your brain actually relaxes. So you're not feeling stressed. You actually release whatever is that thought that brought you the additional stress or anxiety. And you sort of reset your system. And it's a very powerful and very, very easy tool that each of us can use on an everyday basis. And that actually really helps reset your system in any time of the day. Sometimes we can be stressed because of a certain email or because of a certain meeting or whatever that is a stressful situation for you during the day. Use that very simple and fast technique to reset yourself. And then talking of exercise or movement, it doesn't have to be a whole session of half an hour or an hour. And also do whatever you like. Is it just a simple stretch in the morning when you wake up? Is it that you have that favorite tune that you switch on in the morning and you just dance away for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever is it that you love doing? Maybe it's jogging or doing a yoga. What it helps you do, each small exercise or movement actually helps you release endorphins. And endorphins are amazing hormones. What they do, they actually consume stress hormones. And as a result, you feel happier. And when you're happy, you're more productive. You are more happy with your friends and your family. You can be a much better person for everybody and for yourself. So do try those little techniques that I'm sure will change the way you feel during the day. If you, again, maybe want to trick your brain and you're trying to introduce exercise into your life and maybe you find it a little bit tough, there are certain techniques that you can use. So for example, if you're trying to introduce yoga in your morning routine, you can leave the yoga mat by your bed. And literally in the morning, the only thing you need to do is roll out of your bed onto the yoga mat. And you have no choice but exercising. Or if you put your running gear next to your bed and that's the first thing that you see in the morning when you wake up, again, you have no choice but to put it on. And once it's on, you kind of have to go out and do your exercise. You probably are quite familiar with this error message. So I get it quite a bit on my phone, storage almost full. And that's another important exercise to kind of have in your pocket and as a healthy habit is clearing up your space. And it's not about just the space on your phone or physical space or storage, but it's also about your emotional space. So a lot of us kind of live with anxiety or with emotions that you carry from the past, and very often they don't let you experience new excitement or let the new projects or new people in. And you can start by clearing your space in the phone, and in this way you will actually clear up some of those past experiences and emotions. Super simple steps. I would always say start with your laptop. This is something that we probably use on an everyday basis, especially those of us who study or work at the moment. And probably a lot of us, including myself, are guilty with sometimes dumping all the files in just one folder without organizing it, or having a desktop full of random documents which don't really serve us anymore, maybe are very old. So have an exercise one day and clear up your files and organize them. Same with the phone, lots of apps, photos, WhatsApp files, and WhatsApp conversations with people we never maybe even talk to anymore. And especially photos, they take up a lot of space, and sometimes we have files from 5 years ago. We never look at those photos anymore, and as a result we don't really have space to create new memories and store our fresh emotions by adding new photos. So it's a useful habit to go through your phone in maybe every few months. I try to do it every 3 months or so to really clear up the space. Sorting out wardrobe, it's something that I think a lot of women specifically do in every few months as well, because we often say we have nothing to wear, but we have a full stock of clothes. I try to do it every 6 months or so, and usually I always find something to take away to the charity shop, and then usually I feel very good about contributing to the local community, but also that clears up my space, and I feel much lighter in that sense as well. And of course, physical files and documents and newspapers that pile up on your desk or on your reading table. And a lot of the time when I sign up for a newspaper or magazine, I usually very diligently in the first 2-3 months read all the articles, and then at some point I noticed I start saving those interesting articles for later, and before I know it, a year or so later, I have a pile of magazines that I never touched, and all those interesting articles that I wanted to read are not really relevant anymore. So essentially it's a space that is being taken up by something which doesn't serve me anymore. So that's another probably space that we can really use for something more useful. Once you have space for new emotions, for new files or new, let's say, digital information, you can also learn something new. And this is probably one of the most powerful things for me, to learn something very little every day, even if it's going online and reading a new quote from a classic, or if it's reading a page from the book. I know that some people like reading books and others maybe consider it an effort. But if you really like to introduce that habit, you can start by reading a page. And our brain likes training, our brain likes habits. So once you have read one page, your brain will get hooked and will want more of that. So before you know it, you will be reading a chapter a day, or then more and more and more. Same with the language. You can start with just 5 words a day, or you can take the full lesson depending on your capacity, your time, and your desire. But that's, again, a habit you can implement. Painting, crafts, dancing, singing, playing an instrument, anything that you delayed for a while, and maybe now you have that extra bit of time that you can spend because you're not commuting to work, and this is something you are passionate about, you can definitely start a new hobby. Baking, cooking something, or planting a tree in the garden if you have a garden, or maybe planting a plant in your apartment. I personally feel that whenever I do something with my hands, my brain completely relaxes. I'm actually not stressed after that activity. And usually when you do something with your hands, you also generate some sort of tangible result. And I feel we are creatures that like seeing the result, and whenever we can actually touch it, or even better, if we can taste it and share with our family, that's even more empowering. Discovering something new, like a new route on your walk or on your daily run, depending on where you're based. In some of the locations, the quarantine is quite strict. For example, in others, it's being relaxed at the moment. Here in London, we are still in social isolation, but we are allowed to take one walk a day or one exercise outside. So I love walking. And I have my usual route by the river, but what I try to do every day, I amend it slightly, and I do a turn, and I explore a new neighborhood or a new street. And usually I really like watching the different houses, the plants, and it really that keeps me going. That actually makes me really happy. Whatever it is that small thing that makes you happy, do introduce it in your daily routine. It can be just very small. It doesn't have to be a full-on new hobby. And of course, if we're talking specifically about our work or study, do ask for a new project if you have capacity, or contact a colleague to learn something new about what they are doing. Maybe they are involved with the systems, for example, a Salesforce platform, and you want to learn how to build a report in Salesforce. Not that it's also a powerful tool, but also if you learn something new, it's a skill that you can put maybe on your CV even, or just learn it for yourself and for your future. Socializing is that one tricky part, I think, in isolation that some of us have taken to the panic mode. So I have sometimes people telling me that they are tired of communicating because a lot of friends suddenly want to connect on a daily or weekly basis. But I think we are social creatures, and actually a lot of us do need some sort of contact with our family and friends. And now that we cannot see people in person, it's quite important to still keep in touch. And whether it's messaging your loved ones or connecting on video, whatever works for you. So here is a photo from a month ago. We were celebrating the birthday of my friend, and of course we couldn't gather together, but we had an online celebration. And for me, I'm not a person who connects with friends regularly on a weekly basis for long calls, but I do have calls with different groups of friends once in a while, whenever I feel that I need this communication. Otherwise, I just prefer keeping in touch via messaging, because depending again on what your studies or work is, my work is connected with a lot of communication globally to a lot of people, and we have lots of calls. So I have so much communication during the day that actually in the evening, I prefer to stay out of video calls and save that screen time for my working time. But whatever works for you. Being grateful. So this is something that I really, really love. And starting a gratitude journal can actually change your life massively. Especially those of us who maybe are slightly stressed or very stressed, maybe find ourselves in a situation where we are not sure what to do next and we are very confused. This is an amazing habit to have. And I do suggest that you also have a physical gratitude journal or a paper when you can write things down. And the reason for that is when you write things down, your brain remembers better. So if, let's say, there are 3 things a day that you really want to write down in terms of being thankful or grateful for, and you put them in writing, your brain will remember. And actually you will feel much better about yourself during the day once you have written it down. I listened to an interview with Ariana Huffington. I'm sure everyone knows her. She's the founder of Huffington Post, and she's an amazing woman and an amazing businesswoman. And she was asked one question. The question was, what is it that you do every morning and every evening before you go to bed that really sets you up for success? And she said she does two things. One thing is breathing. And we talked about the importance and power of taking that deep breath to settle in, to be in that moment and release kind of all the thoughts. So she does that to begin and end her day. And she also thinks of three things she is most grateful for at that moment. So I suggest we follow Ariana's technique and actually think what we are grateful for. So if you could take your phones and go to menti.com, once you enter the website, you will see the field for the code. And if you put in that code, 262812, you will be able to put in 3 words or short phrases for whatever it is that you're grateful for. And it can be very simple, right? It doesn't have to be a big project, nothing really massive. I already ran 2 sessions, one this morning and one this afternoon. And there were very simple things like having fresh air, or having coffee, or having a daughter, or having a partner next to you. And it would be really, really great to see. We are quite a big group of people here. So if you can just follow that link and quickly put in what is it that you feel very grateful for at the moment, and I will share the results with you. And those of you who are doing it right now, you probably would agree that when you're thinking about the things you're grateful for, you actually don't have time to be worried or to be stressed or angry. When you're in that moment, you actually feel very empowered, very positive, and we see amazing things popping up here. It's amazing. Being alive is one of those things that popped up as the largest. My health, my house, friends, money, able to keep my job. That's very important. A lot of the people nowadays are obviously losing their jobs due to this situation, and it's so important to appreciate it. I do appreciate it on an everyday basis as well, that I have my job, my amazing team. I'm still in the company that I love. It's so, so powerful and such a big part of our life. My mom, my house, my family, lots of family, definitely. Family and in general, people, so our friends, our colleagues, this is something that keeps us going, right? We are social creatures. We appreciate being in touch with people, and of course, being sort of locked up in our houses and not being able to, greet somebody, hug somebody on a daily basis. It's a big thing that we lack. Love. Space and time, definitely. Space and time is probably something that a lot of us reevaluated during this time, because I have some friends who are stuck at home with 3 kids, and it can be, if you have a small space, if you don't have a big house, that can be quite tough as well, and quite challenging as well for both kids and the parents. So having that space and also time to be, sometimes just be by yourself, is also important. Sunshine is out today. This is particularly something I'm very happy about. I live in London, and we don't have that much sun on a daily basis. Awesome. And going to Hult this fall, how amazing is this? Perfect. Yes, definitely. All those, little steps or big steps that we take in our careers, in our everyday life, family life, they matter so much. That's amazing. Guys, thank you so much for sharing. I'm not sure about you, but it actually gives me a really, really big boost of positivity, and just take this cloud of gratitude into the rest of your day or the evening, and appreciate that you have whatever it is that you're grateful for, and come up with 3 more things tomorrow, and maybe write them down and remember to take them with you for the rest of your day. So thank you for sharing. One of the probably most important and resources that we really cannot replenish is our time. Very often we talk about resources, and something that comes up, especially very much correlated with our perception of success, is money, right? And we talk about money and our expenditures, but money can be replenished. And probably, if anything, this is one of the resources that can be replenished easy. If you compare that to health or your time, very often we cannot get it back once it's sort of lost, right? So if we think about time, I came across an interesting statement last week. Somebody on one of the podcasts that I was listening to said that if we think about the phrase spending time and the meaning that we attach to the word spend, it actually is something that we give and never get back. Usually we talk about spending money, right? If we spend money on something which maybe is not even needed in our life, we kind of have this thing, but we forget about it, we never use it, and it sort of is there, but really is not in our life, and we don't really appreciate it. But we spent it, and we never get it back. Same with time. Sometimes we do things that maybe don't serve us, and we spend a lot of time in meetings that maybe don't even need to be there, or we spend time on activities that are not even our activities. Maybe you were dragged into something by your friend and you really joined just because you felt bad for the friend. If you don't join, maybe you will not be perceived in a certain way, etc. Whatever our motivations are, if we think about time in terms of investment rather than expenditure, that perception might change. And I try to sort of implement that thought in my everyday, and that actually changed a little bit how I view certain activities in my life. So if you think about time investment, also apply that in your everyday, whether it's work or whatever that is that you do. Is it studies, or is it your hobby? And maybe in some cases you can cut certain time investments from one place and invest it better in another. And taking that into account, make sure you take breaks. It's super important, and our brains really cannot work for 6 or 8 hours nonstop. We need to take breaks, we need to reset. Maybe we need to take those 5 minutes to have that breath exercise and really reset our brain, or take a 5-minute exercise to jump or dance, or take a half an hour walk when it's sunny outside, because it's not always sunny. So do acknowledge those needs for breaks, and also acknowledge when you need to stop. Also, we cannot work through the night. It's only efficient until a certain point, and it's important to kind of divide your space. Especially if we're at home, we need to know when to physically close the laptop, and maybe if you need to hide it somewhere in the cupboard, not to open it again and check an email at 9 p.m. unless, of course, you really need to, and that's the requirement of your job. Some of us are maybe doctors and are in roles that need to be kind of 24/7 almost, but majority of us can manage our time much better. And of course, meetings, something that I already mentioned, very much related to probably a lot of us in our everyday life. We spend a lot of time in meetings, and I feel that for most of the meetings that we are in, we can actually cut them shorter and invest maybe those extra 15 minutes that we cut from the meeting into something more valuable for ourselves. Maybe it would be another work project, but maybe it would be another let's say exercise that you do, and it benefits you much better and actually gives you a boost of productivity for the next meeting or next project that you have during that day. And having a calendar and actually recognizing for yourself when you're most productive. So I know for myself, for example, I would rather wake up a little bit earlier and do most important tasks or make decisions in the morning, because in the afternoon, I'm much better with the admin. I'm a little bit tired. So if I need to answer an important email, I would actually very often leave it until the morning, because I know that overnight, subconsciously, I will actually come up with a better solution and better phrasing for that specific email. But it's not like that for everybody. Some people function much better during the late hours of the day, and recognizing how you function and when you function better will help you as well achieve better results, and you will invest your time much better when you recognize who you are and how you function. And of course, managing your space. I think for a lot of us who are used to working in the office or who study in the university or school, and before we were in the situation where we had to stay at home, we kind of had space which was managed for us. Whether it's university or office, usually you have a set working space. And in some cases, you can sort of move your desk a little bit. You can swap the desk with your colleague. You can make certain adjustments on your desk and put a nice photo frame or a plant, whatever it is that makes your space a little bit more personal. But in most cases, you have your desk, you have to sit in a certain spot of the office. You don't really have that much flexibility. Whereas when you're at home, you can actually test out whatever works for you. You can see whether you work better in your relaxation space. Maybe you work great on the sofa, or maybe kitchen space actually is very productive for you. Do you need to see open space in front of you and face the open room? Or do you actually work much better when you face books? Is it that you need to have natural light and, for example, sit by the window? Or are you happy with the desk lamp? All of those things are important to understand for yourself, because that actually changes the way you feel and the way you function during the day. And very often those locations can change throughout the day. So sometimes you might feel better by working at a proper desk in the morning, and then after lunchtime, you're actually much more comfortable and productive on the sofa. Or you try different locations in different days. I definitely have switched my seat at least 3 times during 7 weeks that we have been here in lockdown in London. For example, today I'm running this session from a completely new spot in my apartment, and I was located at a very different spot yesterday. And why? Because at the moment I'm standing, and I love to present to the audience when I'm actually standing, because I feel much more empowered. I feel I can deliver better. I'm actually standing tall, and I feel that I'm much more positive when I'm standing and presenting. So those little things I know about myself, and these are important to understand, because you can actually project the better maybe side of you, or empower more people by being in different spaces in your apartment. And managing those is, again, a bit that you can try out by testing different things about yourself. And on that note, this is pretty much all I wanted to cover in terms of the kind of little tricks that have worked for myself, and something that I have tested on myself and that definitely works. Hopefully it is also useful for some of you, and hopefully you also can take away some of those little habits and introduce them in your daily routine. I have mentioned a couple of interviews and podcasts that inspired me, And I just wanted to share them with you in case you wanted to look into them, but I'm sure also some of you know them already. So I do listen to a few podcasts, including Jay Shetty. I love TED Talks. I also am very much into yoga, and specifically I do a lot of breathing exercises because I find them absolutely powerful. And since I started doing them about a year and a half ago, I actually really changed the way I feel. I do handle stress so much better, and I do view a lot of the things around me in a completely different light in terms of my attitude, right? Because very often we cannot change external things that happen in the world, or we cannot change how other people feel about themselves or how they react to us or certain events, but we can definitely change how we feel, and it really is in our hands. And on that note, one of my favorite teachers in yoga is Carolyn Cohen. And for those of you who are interested in that area and you want to learn more about your breath and how you can control it and how that affects the function of your brain and release of certain hormones, I really recommend checking her out. She has different sort of breaths ranging from a 3-minute exercise all the way to a half an hour session. And last but not least, in terms of books, I'm reading at the moment a book called Behave by Robert Sapolsky. And that's a book written by a scientist, and it's about our brain and how that affects different behaviors and why we behave in the way we behave. It's a little bit tough to read in the beginning because he explains a lot of the, let's say, scientific connections, but it does get much more interesting in further chapters, and I'm still reading it, so I cannot give you the full insight. But if you are passionate about brain, about us and our behavior as humans, I really recommend. And on that note, I'm very happy to answer any questions if you have them. I don't see anything in the Q&A box, but if you have anything you would like to share, please pop your questions. I don't see anything. Well, I hope that it was useful for you. And I also would like to invite you to our next session. We have an amazing session coming up this Friday, 8th of May, with Professor Olaf Groth, and he will talk about the future of work. I really, really recommend attending the session if you haven't signed up. Olaf is an amazing professor, one of our best, and I really love going to his classes. And if you haven't signed up and would like to, the link is hult.edu/virtual skills. And I have some questions. How do you manage anxiety during lockdown? So again, a lot of the things that I mentioned on my slides, so a lot of it is actually breath work. And I do a lot of yoga, and yoga not just in terms of exercise, because while exercise is important, but the breath aspect of yoga is very, very powerful, and it actually changes the way you feel. And if you do those exercises in the morning, that actually changes the way you feel during the day. I really recommend. And then sometimes you need to step back and actually understand why you feel the anxiety. Some of the powerful exercises as well as writing things down. Sometimes just writing how you feel actually takes away some part of the anxiety. And what you can do is kind of have 2 columns, and on the one side write down the things that do not really depend on you, right? So things you cannot change. You cannot change the situation that is out there, the virus that came in this world. You cannot change the government decisions. You cannot change decisions of other people, right? But these are the things that are kind of given, and you cannot affect them, and accept them. And then you can write down the things that sort of are related to the column you cannot change, but write down the things in terms of how you feel and what you can do in terms of changing those feelings. And a lot of it, again, is reflecting and actually just doing breath exercise, working on kind of tricking your brain into generating those endorphins that will eventually help you fight the anxiety. But it's a big topic. It's definitely a big topic, and I suggest you check out Carolyn Cowan's link, because she talks a lot about stress, anxiety. And somebody asked me whether I'm going to be teaching at Hult in London this year. So I'm actually not a professor, but thank you. I work for Hult, and I manage alumni relations and corporate relations. So in terms of my profession, I work a lot with people, which is why I guess this topic comes across. So when you work with people, you have to deal with a lot of emotions, because of course some of us are positive, others are maybe a bit more anxious or stressed, and a lot of the time people take the stress out on another person. So I do manage a lot of that, and I guess the techniques that I developed for myself I shared today as well, but I'm always happy to chat about those things, and hopefully you will also use the links that I provided in the resources, and you can check them out. And how to manage yourself in time when there are deadlines. So deadlines is interesting. All of us have deadlines, and I actually think deadlines is a good thing, because we as humans, as creatures, we need to have a certain date to work towards to. I'm not sure if you experienced that, but if, let's say, you have a project and you have a team, or you're studying and you have a teamwork, and then you say, oh, guys, let's do that. Unless you assign a deadline and a certain person to be responsible for the task, it will never get done. So I think deadlines is a good thing, but definitely it creates some sort of pressure, and depending, of course, on how big your project is and how much time you really have. But usually when I have a deadline, I do create sort of mini checkpoints for myself. If the project is bigger and you need to get some feedback from other people, then of course you need to take that into account and create sort of chunks of work for yourself in order to check in and make sure that when actually that deadline comes in, you are prepared, and you don't do stuff last minute. But it's about managing yourself, and being aware of how much time you need to invest into that project to begin with. Right. How does Hult offer resources to help with stress and anxiety? So I guess that is from a prospective student. We actually have welfare officers on each of our campuses, and they do provide one-to-one sessions. So actually, as a student, you can always approach our welfare managers. They are trained coaches, and they have psychology degrees. So they actually are amazing professionals, and they do help a lot our students. Of course, with education being quite demanding. At Hult, we have 1-year degrees, and usually you have a lot during the year. Sometimes you can be overwhelmed. There is a good support system from our staff in welfare. So definitely don't worry about it. We have it sorted. Right. I think I have a couple more questions. I'm not sure if I can answer all of them, because I know that we are a little bit over our time. Right. Somebody asked about the idea of happy hours on Zoom being after hours during the pandemic. So that's a tricky one, right? And I guess that's a decision you have to make for yourself. I personally, I do attend some of the happy hours and I don't attend others. And usually, let's say you mentioned here, if there is a client happy hour, so I guess it's directly related to your work. If you are, let's say, a little bit overwhelmed and you don't want to stay for 3 hours on that happy hour, just have an expectation. So contact the group that you're going to be spending time with in advance and tell them that you can spend, let's say, just an hour with them, so that they're aware that you're there for a limited amount of time, and they will not be surprised that, oh, you suddenly have to leave. But if you have that, communication in advance, I think that absolutely fairly raises an expectation, and nobody will be upset that you will suddenly leave. I think a lot of the time, and especially in the time when we are all located in different parts of the world, at home, we cannot really communicate to people in person. It's important to over-communicate. My manager always says that. She says, in these times, we need to over-communicate, and that's probably true. So it's best that you tell people twice than not tell at all. And managing people's expectations is important, because again, some people with happy hours and with social calls after hours, after your working hours, they want to stay in touch and they need to kind of have that communication. But if you just tell them that, guys, I'm available for an hour and I will join you for an hour, but then I will have to leave, and it's totally fine. I have never yet seen anyone reacting in a negative way when you tell, even if it's a top management, and you tell them that you have that limited time, you will be joining, you will be acknowledging, right? But you will have to leave. It's totally fine. And I think it's a lot about how you position it. And I think with that, I will actually wrap up the session. I know that you have been on the call for quite a while, and I really, really appreciate all of your questions. It's a very engaging group, and I'm also very thankful to all of you for the amazing gratitude cloud that we created today. It's a lot to take away with me, and I'm going to take it for my walk. I'm going for a walk later on. So much positive energy, and I hope you also take away some positive energy for yourself to continue with your week. And please connect with me on LinkedIn, right? If there are questions that you would like to ask and maybe I haven't picked them up today, please do reach out to me, Olga Ivanova. If you find me on LinkedIn and just send me the request, I will be happy to keep in touch. And I know some people mentioned that they were accepted to Hult and they're looking forward to join in the fall. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, hopefully, and have a fantastic rest of your day. And hopefully you will join as well some of our next sessions as part of the Virtual Skills Lab. All the best. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all your positive energy, and take care.